Welcome to Coconut Grove, Florida. Here on Charles Avenue, we see the well-maintained, historic Stirrup House. It is one of the oldest homes in Miami, built by Coconut Grove Miami pioneer Ebenezer Stirrup in the year 1897. Mr. Ebenezer migrated to the States from the Bahamas in 1888. Eventually, he and his family would move to Coconut Grove, Florida. He worked as a farmer and chauffeur for the Deering Estate, which we know today as the beautiful Vizcaya Gardens. It's important to note that in the 1800s, back in those days, sometimes people were paid with land. Mr. Stirrup was paid with land. He accumulated lots of land and built over 100 homes on that land, giving many people of color, especially migrating Bahamians, a chance to rent or become a homeowner in the Coconut Grove area. If we go a few steps south and then make a right on Hibiscus, we'll notice Christ Episcopal Church. Mr. Stirrup is not only a founding member of this church when it was founded in 1901, but he also donated the land for the church to be built on. Off of Charles Avenue in Douglas, a few minutes from Mr. Ebenezer's home, we have the Charlotte Jane Memorial Park Cemetery, which is named after Mr. Ebenezer's wife. It's one of the oldest graveyards in Miami. There was actually a time when blacks were not allowed to be buried with their white counterparts. They had to have their own separate cemeteries to be buried in, and this is an example. As Mr. Stirrup owned this land, being the shrewd businessman that he was, he would sell the plots as needed. Right next to the historic final resting place in Coconut Grove, we have the historic Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church. It is the oldest black church in Miami-Dade County. It was originally called St. Agnes Baptist Church. It was organized by Reverend S.A. Sampson and some 56 members, as they were not satisfied with the worship services at their original church, an integrated church they belonged to called Union Chapel. Black churches in general play a vital role in serving as the foundation to support the well-being of the black community. Christ Episcopal Church and St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church are just two out of many of the churches that were born out of Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church. Off of Thomas Avenue, we have Greater St. Paul AME Church, and it was founded in 1895. As mentioned before, St. Paul was organized by members who branched off from Macedonia Baptist Church. In 1901, Reverend John Davis, who was pastor of St. Paul AME at the time, and his congregation organized the first public school for blacks in Dade County. Reverend Davis was then appointed principal by the superintendent of Dade County Public Schools, Z.T. Merritt. In the picture here, we have Reverend Davis standing behind the first 12 students who were enrolled. It was called the Little Schoolhouse. With the support of the community and others, the school grew and would eventually be known as the Dade County Training School. And it also had the name of Coconut Grove Junior High School. Mrs. Frances Tucker would become principal of the school in 1929 and serve as principal for over 25 years, helping the school to progress, but at the same time being the mother away from home for the students. Under her leadership, the first senior class graduated in 1939. Black students were now able to receive their diplomas. When her good friend from the Tuskegee Institute, George Washington Carver, passed away, she led a campaign to name the school after him. George Washington Carver Junior Senior High School. So you're saying what happened was this with Miss Tucker, Miss Frances Tucker, right? Frances Tucker was meeting with some white people at Carver, right?
Right.
And these white people didn't know that black people wore shoes, and they said this out loud.
Yeah.
And this is what stuck with you.
Too. There was 2 or 3 of them. I think there was a man with them, but there was 2 or 3 ladies. And one lady said to the other one, when we were passing from one class to another, "Oh, they wear shoes."
Wow.
And I never forgot that. I think I was around, 8th grade or 7th grade or something like that.
And it's crazy because, that's like traumatic, You're a young kid and you hear something like that from an adult. Right. And that kind of stuff will stick with you your entire life. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of things at my age, Marcus, I don't remember. But some things I still remember. I still remember.
But on a positive note, did you know that Frances Tucker was friends with George Washington Carver? She was actually friends with him. She was actually friends with him at Tuskegee Institute.
Yeah.
And that's how that's why she named the school George Washington Carver. Yeah.
And I had friends who their parents, or we weren't really able to buy our lunch. So they would let us work in the cafeteria where the kids would bring their trays, and they would have a window that they would put the trays in there, or the dishes or silverware. And we would work there, empty the trays, clean them, wash them, put them in the dishwasher. And for that, they would give us lunch. And they had this little dessert called bread pudding, and a little small cup of vanilla ice cream. Oh my God!
That sounds good.
Look like we had died and went to heaven. Got that little piece of bread pudding and put that little vanilla ice cream on it, and we were just as happy. And we looked forward to doing that. We worked in the cafeteria, and then after that, we washed up and cleaned up and went to our regular classes. But it was so enjoyable.
This photo shows Miss Carver High and her flower attendance at the homecoming parade in 1962. Here we have the principal, Mr. Bannerman, posing in front of a plant at the class of 1963's prom which was held at Copa City. And here we have the graduation program for the class of 1963. This is the handbook for the 1964-1965 school year. In this photo taken in 1964, we see a representative from the George Washington Carver girls track team taking the lead.
I think that's what it was called.
So the culture in Coconut Grove was friendly. Like it was like kind of like, was it like Overtown? Was it different than Overtown?
It's different than Overtown because Coconut Grove consists of a lot of people that came from the islands,
Mm-hmm.
and they were hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
They came from the islands, and a lot of the land that they got, not because they were paid
Mm-hmm.
in order to make it possible for them to buy the land, they would clean off lots for white people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the white people would pay them by giving them a piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they started. And eventually they started building houses on it, and they started renting houses on it,
Mm-hmm.
and they had their own little stores there. So Coconut Grove was really, I would say, more than 50% of them was people that came from the islands, came from Bahamas and other places. But that's where Coconut Grove really started.
How would you compare over not to be biased or to be critical or to be mean or like to be like funny or anything, but to be more like to be objective? How would you compare Overtown to Coconut Grove?
Overtown to Coconut Grove was, should I say, I always would say it was like people that lived in the city compared to people who lived in the country.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Or people who grew up in the country.
Okay.
They mannerism and the way they acted, the way they carried themselves,
Mm-hmm.
the way they dressed,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The way they talked, the way they communicated with people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
As I remember, my wife went to Northwestern
Mm-hmm.
in Carver. Those two schools were almost like night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Now we were wearing like khakis or overalls or stuff like that, and they were wearing pants and stuff that they called tailors or tees,
Mm-hmm.
and you would pay more for it, but it would be more like a dress up compared to us in Grove would be more like a dress down,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But eventually, the people that lived in Coconut Grove and went to school, many, started dressing and acting like some of the people over town,
Mm-hmm.
too, because they moved out, met other people, and guess they decided this is what they would like too. But it was different. And actually, when we would go over there, they would say Coconut Grove was considered the sticks, country,
Mm-hmm.
not city like
Mm-hmm.
people that lived over town, or people who went to Booker T. Washington,